flying our airplanes, which I'll talk about here, but it's incredibly popular what we're doing, good and bad, I guess, from what you read in the press, but I'll show you how we're going to use it, and maybe you can see some applications for what's specific to this conference. If y'all can hear me, just if you can't hear me, let me know. First of all, the background for how we got involved with the unmanned systems is the Department of Interior, the map there on the right. The colored area is all the Department of Interior lands, and we basically manage 1 out of every 5 acres, primarily here in the West. We have the responsibility to monitor that on a regular basis with the remote sensing techniques, or in the field, or both, or however that's done by those agencies. We see the gap for where unmanned systems come in. Underneath the satellites and aerial photography, it's filling a gap down even lower. We're focused primarily on the really small systems, 4 pounds. I'll talk about the weights of them here in a minute, but under 20 pounds right now is what we're working with. We got involved in 2005, actually, just tapping what this was all about. In 2008, we established the project office, and then shortly after that, we got some military surplus systems, which actually put us into the ballgame of, for if nothing else, how to deal with the FAA and how they deal with these. So I've got a lot of pretty pictures that I want to get to, but I do have to talk about the policies. It's a lot about what you're hearing on TV and the newspapers. Who can operate an unmanned system, or drone as they're referred to. We don't like the word, but it doesn't bother me at all. Everybody knows what a drone is. Not everybody knows what a UAS is. We have to operate because we're a public agency. Basically, anybody that has a remote control airplane, I saw a hobby shop 3 blocks away. You can go down there, buy one, go fly around in your park. Not a problem at all. You follow the hobby rules that have been around for quite a while, and not a problem at all. The minute you become a commercial entity or a public entity like we are federally funded, then you start to fall under all the FAA rules for how to handle this. What we have to do is apply for a certificate of authorization. We refer to it as a COA, and it's about 1 inch thick of paper that we have to have at least 3 to 6 months lead time to fly a 4-pound airplane. That's just how the FAA has established itself right now. But I'm not going to go too far into it. If you want to catch me afterwards, I'll give you all the painful details. But basically, if you are a university, even a state, local, anything under tax money, you can fly right now. But you have to very definitely define your area. You have to issue NOTAMs, the whole deal. We have to have Class 2 medicals. It seems silly, but that's how we operate. And then, of course, law enforcement and privacy concerns. That's probably what you hear the most about on TV. It's something we are well aware of. We get tapped by media, the newspapers and magazines on a regular basis. And probably 99% of those have been positive about what we're doing. It's not what you hear on TV, but what people envision are the big predator drones that are dropping bombs. That's not what we're doing. We're doing the little things, and we're over federal land. Under federal land, we're kind of immune to all the privacy stuff, but there are private in-holdings in there. And even though we don't have to, we always get a hold of that farmer, rancher, whatever, and let them know what we're doing. And usually they're all excited about it, and they want a picture, and we usually give it to them, not a problem. So anyway, I won't get in any more of that. These are the 2 vehicles that we currently are operating. One's a fixed wing, one's a hovercraft, AeroVironment. These are Army, actually Air Force and Army. I take that back. They're both Army surplus. All the branches use various models, but these were actually given to us. They're several $1 million systems. The Ravens, the one on the top there, has been through a couple wars. The Honeywell T-Hawk that we got were brand new. The military basically rejected those, mainly because it's gas-powered and extremely loud. But we saw uses for them. The weights on them, the little Raven is just 4.5 pounds. And the T-Hawk is about 18 pounds. If it's fueled up, it's 20 pounds. Also, the duration on them was about 40 minutes. That's usually what we keep our flights to. I was just talking to Austin, who followed me here, speaking, but our areas are tiny. The range on these will go out to 10 kilometers. We are required by the FAA to always keep it in line of sight, so we have to have observers or the actual operators that always have eyes on it. So given that, we usually can have to operate under a couple miles. This is how we set up. It's not always glamorous. It's usually on a table, in a U-Haul, in a pickup late at night where it's awful darn cold. But the trade-off is these are the federal lands that we've got to work on, and they're quite spectacular, so don't feel too sorry for us. The sensors that came along, I'm actually a cartographer with the USGS. I have been for 29 years, remote sensing photogrammetry. So that's our primary interest. I could really care less how they're lifted in the air, but all the attention is on the vehicles, of course. But what came with these particular ones, since they're military, are video systems, natural color video and thermal for night viewing, but they're, of course, designed to look over the hill at the bad guys. We've adapted them. I'll show you some examples of how we got them and used them right away, but of course, being wanting better stuff, we hit some lightweight cameras that we stuffed in there, and I'll show you how we did that. And then we are always looking at new sensors, and I think just yesterday I saw some email that we now have a chemical sniffer for volcano type stuff that we're interested in. A lot of talk about LiDAR. There's a big LiDAR conference going on in Denver, and some of these are getting a little tiny size that we actually can start thinking about putting in these little systems. So looking at the video, natural color and thermal, right away, of course fire always comes up. It works very well. Not over a big fire, but over small fires, in particular controlled burns would be very useful. We did this out in the Dugway Proving Grounds as part of our training. We have to have training in all these systems as well. So yeah, that works well. We went down to Florida, did it on Air Force Base down there. This was all in restricted airspace, and not a problem at all using that. Then in March 2011, we got our first approval to fly in the national airspace. It was a big deal, as you can tell by all the people there. But we flew for Fish and Wildlife over the Monte Vista refuge down in southwest, down by Alamosa. And we didn't know if this would work or not, but we used the thermal video, and we sent it up during the day. Of course, they all flushed. We said they're way too skittish for this. This was using the Raven, the little fixed wing. However, we had approval to fly a half hour before, civil twilight, and after. So we got up real early and flew, and the cranes all come back and roost at night over the water. Stayed real still. We got down to 75 feet, didn't bother them at all. We were able to do our counts. I think we had independent guys counting like they usually do, and then we did our counting with some automated processes or just manually picking the points, and we were within 3 to 4%. Then we headed out to West Virginia for some coal mine stuff. This is still using the video. The Raven is hand launched there. It works pretty well. You can fly it with the laptop or with a hand controller, which is pretty common. But they have over 2,000 mines that they have to monitor for rehab, basically, and some of that's pretty dangerous getting down in there, as well as snakes and whatever else. But they're quite excited about it. And as we go out on these missions, a lot of side stuff always pops up. We happen to fly over some underground coal seam fires, and it picked that up, which got them very excited. And I'm not going to show all our projects, but just to give you a taste here, this is still using the video off the Raven. Able to see some of the water discharge and seeps up in Montana. Just with thermal differences, this is just relative differences. We don't have a calibrated thermal camera yet. Then we had the tough job heading out to Hawaii. And some of these projects, they're not deep science. It's just inspecting a fence line, 60 miles of fence line that were around the park to keep the feral goats out that eat a lot of these beautiful plants that are going extinct, and so they kind of have open season on the goats, and I can see why. South Dakota, just flying up the Missouri River for river erosion. we launch off the boat. We launch however we can. Density, altitude always plays a factor in this. So however you can get it in the air, we've tried many things. So then we wanted to move to some better cameras that are still lightweight. We right away looked at the GoPro cameras. They're about 4 ounces. So we could take out one of the cameras in the Raven and stuff the little GoPro in there. And by doing that, we would set it on still frame or even high definition video was useful. But the still frame jumped us up to about 12 megapixel of resolution. Then all of a sudden that starts to get really usable, even though there was no referencing on it, which is an issue too. We then moved over to the Canon cameras, which do have GPS embedded in them, and some of that is good enough that we can actually correct that down. If given ground control with the software we're using, we can tie that pretty tightly down to the ground. And then eye buttons, those are pretty simple. They're just look like a battery, a small battery, watch battery that we just tape on there, and it records temperature and humidity if you ever want to do any profiling. So, however, we could get them into the nose, or we just strapped them onto the side of the gimbal on the T-Hawk, and then we want to point them down so we can get the nadir look, because we're all mappers. And that's how we operate them. We just fly and then download the imagery, and then of course we flew over in Aspen, and right away we could see how much improvement we were getting with just that little GoPro camera. Made it very useful. And the Elwha River dam removal out in Olympic. These were two of the largest dams ever removed to restore the lake back to the river, and they were watching the sediment. They're actually still watching it. It's coming back extremely fast. And then back out to West Virginia, we've actually been out there 3 times. However, this time we used the T-Hawk. It was the first chance we got to use the T-Hawk. It's a vertical takeoff and landing, and right away they saw this is what they want to use. And they don't necessarily want to map the areas. They're just monitoring, so we can change the angle on that camera, as well as the video that is on the camera. If you see the little ball there, that's pointable and zoomable. So we can still record all that, but we also strap on the camera, and then we can keep the high resolution data also. And they got extremely excited about that. As a matter of fact, I had to go back out there again. Just some more examples. Mojave National Preserve. We, once again, nothing real scientific. It's just seeing as the Park Service acquires land, either given to them or however they get it, there's junk out there, and they have to decide whether that is actually junk that has to be removed, or if it's historically significant, then they have to go through all their procedures there. Just another side note, while we're out there, the Joshua trees were all in bloom, so we're able to pick that up quite easily and map all that for them. BLM is extremely active as well. They're right down beside us. We share people to fly. Some of the rust skeleton weed work over there, large areas. Platte River sediment seemed kind of odd, but they were putting sand back into the Platte River for habitats, I guess. But we were actually able to get down to centimeter level for volumetric measurements. There's another project coming up here. And then recently we were just out in California and Nevada, and again at a wildlife refuge for seeing how well we could actually distinguish bird types as opposed to just counting them. So we were playing with the zoom levels on the camera and different heights, and they were just kind of seeing what could be done. We also have a color infrared camera, which I think Austin's going to talk more about because we have the same setup. So it's still taking that Canon camera. We have the S100 actually that we've jumped to, and these companies will remove the filter, just very simple, take it out, and we start to get color infrared, just barely tapping into the near infrared, but still quite usable enough to do NDVI work. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Here in Mesa County, there is the sheriff department, I believe. They have a code for the whole county. So they have flown the Dubuque landslide as well as gravel pits that they're required to measure volumetric stuff. And they're getting down to centimeter level on that. So I wanted to talk real quick about the data processing. We get the data. How much time do I have? Okay, I can do it. We get our still frame or even the video that we'll chop up. We don't like to do that because we lose a lot of resolution. We're running it through software. We're actually using a Russian software called PhotoScan. It runs about $3,000, but it's a photogrammetric software that makes all this usable. It's based on computer vision is the catch term, I guess, for doing the 3D modeling with these overlapping stereo images. With that Canon camera, there's also a hacker's development that we can put in there that will trigger that photo every roughly 3 seconds. But by doing that, and we can keep it at a constant speed, we get our overlap that we need for stereo coverage. Once we do that, then we can now put it through our software. So we basically run the first process, which basically all it does is correlates the overlapping images, and we're starting to get point clouds. This has gotten a lot of interest for good reason, because we're now able to, there's a sparse point cloud and a dense point cloud, but the latest versions, we're getting roughly, we'll utilize about 500 images. We're getting in excess of 100 to 200 million points generated off of that, and it's starting to rival some of the LiDAR work. Now there's obviously some differences, but there's advantages to both, but it's worth looking at if you know the price of LiDAR. The next step is to generate the elevation model, and then we can drape the images over top, and then we have our ortho image. So we basically are getting the point cloud, the video, the point cloud, the elevation model, and then the ortho. That's our four main things that we're getting out of it. And once we have the ortho and all those data sets, it's just like any other GIS data set or remote sensing. We can put it through the processes of classification or 3D modeling or whatever. And then I do want to talk a little more on that color infrared camera. These cameras are only $300 to up to $1,000. Same cameras you see in Best Buy. That's where I got mine. The ones that pull out that filter, we let somebody that actually knows what they're doing do that, so it about doubles the price. But we get that offline. The difference is, since we're flying at 400 feet, the resolution of this infrared image is down to centimeters or inches. In this case, I was 400 feet above ground, and I'm getting 1.5 inches pixel by 1.5 inches. And what that does for us, we flew a golf course in Aurora down in Denver. I think you can see right away this over a putting green, which is probably 30 yards by 30 yards. And we run the NDVI over top of that. You can start to see where there may be water stress or fertilizer stress, or if you see the application in the precision ag world, which is projected to be the biggest market for all this, they're getting real site-specific on how you apply your applications or whatever. I'm an Iowa farmer, so this is of interest to us. And then, of course, all the stuff you see on TV and in the hobby shops and everything else, there's tons of them out there. And it's projected to be an $80 billion industry once the FAA opens up the air. But a lot of these, even like that one down in the left-hand corner we're looking at pretty heavily, it's the Phantom 2, which I'm sure you've seen online or wherever, is extremely useful for we're hoping someday the scientists can just take it with them. It's another tool in his toolbox. Fly a mile square area and be done. And I believe we have a website that we keep very current. We try to document a lot of the stuff that we're doing, so we make little one-pagers out there that is free for anybody. We're as transparent as we can be, so everybody knows what we're doing, anything that's of use. And that's just our small little team down there. And I guess I'm done. I'll take questions, right? So if there is, got one in the back.
So how much does this cost in relation to maybe like actually flying out versus like helicopter, taking somebody out, landing, monitoring, just doing like simple monitoring versus you using this and just taking photos?
Yeah. My boss likes to say it's a 10 to 1 difference, and about the only way we were able to gauge that was infrared flight that was going to be done aerially, quite a bit higher, and so they can obviously cover far more ground. So it was going to be, say, $30,000, and we usually go out for $3,000 to $4,000 for a week of work. It's not a direct comparison. I wouldn't be that optimistic. I'd say probably 5 times less. But if you talk to the Mesa County guy that has to fly the gravel pit, he said they were required to do that quarterly, and it was costing, I don't know, $10,000 either each year or each quarter. I don't know which, but he can go out there for a couple $100 because he can fly by himself or with a partner. So I don't know if that answers it, but yes, sir.
In terms of acreage, which seems to be a great point or price point,
what is most effective to fly with a plane and what's most effective to fly with
Yes.
a UAV? And what would you say is your acreage?
We usually tell people we can cover probably 2 to 4 square miles pretty easily in a day, if everything's working right, and that's at 400 feet. We have to stay below 400 feet. If it's an aerial company, they can obviously go higher and have metric cameras that can do a whole lot of other things. So. Yes, sir.
Have you done any, in the river channels, have you done any bed texture analyses? You said that you could, with a photo, and maybe from the photogrammetry, you might be able to tease out coarser sediment texture?
Yeah, that's what actually the Elwha project up in Olympic National Park, and then the Platte River, that was what that was all about. It's pretty good. That's about all I could say. With a Canon camera, it's pretty amazing what you can do with a $300 camera that would take $500,000 for a metric camera, no less than 5 years ago. So I don't know that we can give you examples or send you some of those if that would help, but I can't give you an exact answer on it.
yeah, I mean, to generate like 7 spacing maps,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, this would be really important for fish habitat and other aquatic.
Yeah, we have a water guy that's actually going to put out a report. They did transects across, and then they compared elevation-wise how good we were hitting that, and it was pretty eye-opening. But that was his primary interest. So. Okay, thank you.